Are you looking to increase your sales and boost your selling abilities to the max? Welcome to the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast with best-selling author Eric Lofholm. Eric has trained over 10,000 students, and they have generated over $500 million in sales increases over the last 20 years. One thing he understands is that being a lifelong learner is key to your sales success. Every week, Eric Lofholm interviews elite sales and business professionals and discovers what helps make them the legends they are today.
Hi, this is Eric Lofholm. I want to welcome all of you to another great edition of the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast. And I have a fantastic guest today. Gerhard Gschwandtner is joining us, and he is the founder and CEO of Selling Power Magazine, the top sales publication for sales managers and VP of sales since 1981. Gerhard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Eric. It's an honor to be with you today.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, why don't we start off, Gerhard? Share with our listeners, tell them a little bit about you so they can get connected to you.
I originally grew up in Salzburg, Austria, and that's the area where they filmed The Sound of Music. For anybody who is not familiar with that, check it out. Salzburg has an amazing fortress that I remember looking up to as a kid. That was built like in the 9th century or 10th century, and it's sort of strange to grow up in a house. You know, my grandmother owned a country inn, and we grew up there. And that the foundation for the house was started in 1480 or something like that.
Wow.
So it's really old country. And I remember the oldest bakery in Salzburg was started in 1439 or something like that. And that bakery still exists.
Wow.
Can you imagine 600 years of selling, bakery items? It's amazing. So I always wanted to explore the world and move out of Austria. And I think what gave me that idea was my grandmother's house was next to a river. And I asked her, where does this river go? And she said, oh, that goes into Salzach. And is that a bigger river? Yeah, that goes to Salzburg. And where does the Salzach go? It goes to the Danube. And the Danube goes where? Well, it goes to Vienna. That's the capital of Austria. And where does it go after that? Oh, it connects with the Black Sea. And where does the Black Sea go? Well, that ultimately connects with the Atlantic Ocean. And I said, what's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? And she says, America. So I said, as a kid, I was imagining, what if I build a little boat and went to America? Can I do that? Well, she says, you need a bigger boat.
All right.
I was fortunate to get a ticket out of Austria when I first started in the construction business, and I got a job. I went to college at night school, and I learned French and English, and I got a job with a French construction equipment company. And they had a subsidiary in Salzburg, and they promoted me to be the assistant to the president. And I learned a lot about selling, about marketing, about serving customers. And I became the liaison person between the factory that was headquartered in Paris and Salzburg. And I flew back and forth at least once a month. And I became fluent in French. And I showed Austrian contractors around in the factory and made introductions and helped with sales and helped to support the sales team. And 2 years later, I got transferred to the international headquarters in Paris, and I was in charge of sales training. And we had 1,600 salespeople in 40 different countries. We had about 20 people to support sales with training kits, and I designed one of those training kits I called it interactive video training, and we had videotaped sort of vignettes of good sales calls, and 2 minutes long, and we had salespeople look at that, and I asked them what was good and why, and or what would you do differently and how. And that launched us into role plays, and salespeople got quickly better by using those, experiences with very short role plays that were analyzed in a very constructive way where people could improve very quickly. And I did a test with the German subsidiary, and after training everybody, sales went up by 38%. And then the American subsidiary wanted to know, what has he done for Germany? Can he do that for the United States? So they invited me to come to the US and for 3 months and train the entire distributor organization. And after I finished that, the American subsidiary manager offered me a job in sales and marketing. And I always wanted to come to the United States. And the rest is history. 2 years later, I quit my job, started my own business, and started a sales training consulting company and did this interactive video training. It was a lot of fun. And then one day I thought, I got to promote some product instead of just doing consulting work. And I created a sales training course I called The Languages of Selling, Verbal and Nonverbal Selling Power. So we're teaching salespeople how to use nonverbal communication techniques together with professional selling skills. And it was new in the market, and it really sold very well. And I needed to lower my advertising costs, so I created a newspaper tabloid called Selling Power. And I had a 2-page ad for the program. And then something strange happened, which was that sales trainers called me and said, can we buy 100 copies of this Selling Power newspaper? And I said, what would you do with it? That's my advertising piece. And he said, and they said, well, there are really good articles in there. There was all pre-internet, and good how-to sales skills articles were hard to come by. And I sold like 3,000 copies of my direct mail piece. And then I thought maybe,
oh my gosh,
right. And then I thought I'd do a volume 1, number 2, and added more pages. I think it was, we started with 8, and then we had 16 pages. And I put a little ad on the back and said, if you want that, get a 1-year subscription to this publication, next year we come out with 6 issues, sent me $12. And I remember talking to my wife about it. I said, if I get 500 subscribers or more, I continue. If I get less, I refund the money. And within 6 weeks, I had 1,200 paid subscriptions.
Wow.
By the end of the year, in 81, I had like 8,000 subscribers, something like that. And then 80% of them renewed, which was very high. And then something strange happened. And I was not, I didn't grow up in the publishing business. I was a sales trainer. And somebody called me and said, hey, my name is Art Bauer with American Media, and we have sales training videos. Can we advertise one of our videos in your publication? You're going to sales managers, right? And I said, yeah. So I said, how much do you want to pay? And he says, well, I have a $2,000 budget. Would that do it? I said, of course. So then I woke up to the idea I can sell advertising. And then soon I hired somebody just to make introductions and book phone calls for me. And I sold advertising. So we had a lot more money coming in. So I could afford going away from newspaper to a glossy magazine. And pretty soon we were on the newsstands. We were in the back of United Airline magazines. We had a circulation of $150,000, and we were the #1 magazine in the country.
Wow, that's amazing. So
And
originally it was designed to promote your sales training, and it just
exactly.
organically turned into the most successful publication of its kind.
And then Prime Media offered me $10.5 million to sell the publication to them. And I thought, I'm making good money. I don't need $10 million. That's
Yeah,
uh, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And I love what I'm
yeah.
doing. So I said, I'll keep it. And they would have probably wrecked it. But then the biggest sort of setback was the trend, when the internet came, that all the publications went online. Google and Facebook, and they sucked the honey out of the publishing business, and we had to scratch our heads and say, what is happening to print? And I remember having this conversation with Marc Benioff. That was about 12 years ago. He says print is dead, and because I was challenging him. I said, well, what makes you think that you can, create a big business with a SaaS-based CRM program when there's Act and Goldmine and they're doing well, and Siebel has sales.com and they shut it down, and there was an online SaaS program, and Act had Interact and they had 10,000 subscribers and they shut it down because it wouldn't work. What makes you think that you're going to succeed with this? When two other competitors had the similar idea and shut it down because the basic thinking was that SaaS is just a dream. And he says, I'll make it up with marketing, and my goal is to do $1 billion worth of business in 10 years, and he did it in 7. So he knew the trend that everything is going to go the path of digital transformation and online, and we were caught sort of flat-footed by waking up and say, we have this great publishing tool and that engine that creates a lot of good content. How do we go online? So we started a blog post, we started a website, we started to offer webinars, and the print revenue, was like $5 million in print advertising. It shrank to about 850,000 inside of 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And yeah, that was hard to swallow. So we had to reinvent ourselves. But whenever you're pushed against the wall, you come up with new ideas because you want your business to survive. You want to maintain the employment. You want to continue on a growth path. And then we started the Sales 2.0 conference. I actually bought that conference that only had one event, and it was successful. I said, I want to buy it. And it turned out to be a really good idea because it became profitable, and it was a different business model, which I really liked because we decided to go high end, have events in Four Seasons hotels, attract the best speakers, and create a really great experience in terms of the interaction with the audience and accessibility to the speakers, where people network with each other, and I really enjoyed that. And then COVID came, and March last year we had the last Sales 3.0 live conference in Orlando, Florida, when there were only about like 20 cases of COVID in Florida. And the following week, Disney had to shut down, and everything shut down. And we had to cancel all our conferences and convince our customers to take a shot at virtual Sales 3.0 events. And we, in the beginning, the first 2 events were not that great because we bet on the wrong platform. We did not know really how to shop for a good online platform. And then we found a much better one. And then things turned around that instead of getting 350, 450, or 500 people to a live event, we now get 1,000 or 1,100 or even 1,200 sales leaders from 44 different countries worldwide.
Wow.
Sales 3.0, yeah. And I'm a little bit mystified because I don't know where those people internationally, where they find us, because we're not mailing to them. We are not reaching out to them. And it's all done online. They look for, events in the United States. And I have a lot of LinkedIn connections overseas as well, but it was really like, I think COVID was like a bonus for our business.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is really amazing. Well, you have had an opportunity to work with some of the top sales leaders, sales managers, companies, sales trainers. What are a couple of golden nuggets that you've learned through the years, things that really stand out to you to share with the salespeople watching this that could help them be more successful?
Well, one of the things that I learned is that we had to stand out on the newsstands. So we had personalities on the cover, and we had Michael Dell, Marc Benioff, we had Malcolm Forbes, we had Larry King, Dr. Dennis Waitley, Dr. Wayne Dyer, even Dr. Norman Vincent Peale or Earl Nightingale. We had leading personalities from the 80s and 90s and Zig Ziglar. And in every one of those conversations that I had with interviews with those really famous and amazing people, it was so beneficial. Like I remember interviewing Mary Kay Ash, the cosmetics queen, and I flew to Dallas, got the interview, and she told me, Gerhard, you ought to use some of those Mary Kay products because they're good for your skin. And if you do this every day for the next 30 years, your grandchildren going to make a comment how young you look. And I thought, wow, she's such a great saleswoman. And I took her advice, and I thought it was terrific. Or Dr. Ken Cooper, he is the founder of the aerobics clinic. And 20 years ago, he was sort of the pioneer of aerobic fitness. And he says, Gerhard, people don't die of their last disease. People die of their entire lives. And you want to lead a life where you take care of yourself in eating right and exercising, being on the go, and being fit. And I started to run. I started to walk, do aerobics, and join a gym, and get a personal trainer, and take care of my body, because fundamentally selling is a transfer of energy, and you need that positive energy to deal with other people, help people solve their problems, add value to the relationship. And, some of the other people, like Bill McDermott, is probably one of the most amazing leaders I've ever met. He was the youngest vice president of sales for Xerox. He started out selling copy machines in New York City. And then they gave him Puerto Rico as a territory. And he says, my goal in Puerto Rico, and move to Puerto Rico, my goal is to make you numero uno in 12 months. And they were number 64. And without really changing, making a lot of changes in personnel, he turned around the organization, and a year later, they were number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then he, moved on to SAP, became the president of SAP Americas, and then he became co-CEO and then CEO of SAP. And he moved the company from a market value of 39 billion to about 170 billion. And then
Wow.
he moved on from SAP to ServiceNow, and he landed there in November a year ago. And he, I remember the market cap was around the same, about $39-40 billion. And today it is close to 100 billion.
Wow. Let's talk about prospecting for a minute. So,
Sure.
with the advertising that you sold through the years, have you done a lot of the prospecting yourself with these key accounts?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had a LinkedIn strategy. I decided here are the 100 top targets that we need to hit. I want to know who is the VP of marketing and who is the CEO, and connect with them on LinkedIn. Send them messages. Then found the email address. Did an outreach, but then I also use Connect and Sell. That is a tool where you upload a list of, let's say, 500 names. And instead of you dialing sequentially, they dial like there are 37 people that dial simultaneously. And the minute somebody picks up the phone, the dialing shuts down, the call is sent to your phone, and you immediately talk and say, "Hi, Eric," and have a conversation. So instead of dialing it yourself, when you do it yourself, you probably can do about 120 dials a day, but they do a lot more. So you can, instead of having 7 or 10 conversations a day, you can have 5 to 7 conversations every hour. And that is the best way, in my opinion, to prospect. That's the best way to convert a list that you have created or that you've gotten in return for being an exhibitor at a show or something like that. And that's my advice to anybody in sales: automate your prospecting efforts.
One of the things that a lot of salespeople struggle with is maybe going after a larger account and it's out of their comfort zone.
Right.
Or what advice would you give to somebody who they're uncomfortable either asking for a larger amount or the size of the prospect that they're going after? Maybe it's a little bit intimidating to them. You've networked and done business with the top people in the world. So what tips would you have from your perspective?
Well, I think I approached some of the best interviews I've done. I approach it like a research project. Like before I interviewed Zig Ziglar, I read every one of his books, and then I made that upfront investment, and then I asked for an interview, and I developed a pitch letter that was really succinct, that let him know that I have a really valid reason for interviewing him, that I've done my research about him, and here's the reason why our audience is really interested in what he has to say. And here are some of the questions I'm planning to ask. And it always worked. I usually had, when I send out 5 letters, I got at least 1 yes. And I got people like Jay Leno to say yes. Why? Because I did the research, or I got an interview with Donald Trump, and it was not the research about him because everybody knows him, but I did the research on his assistant. And she turned me down about 6 times, and until I found out that she likes chocolates, and I found a Belgian chocolate shop in Madison Avenue, and they had her send like a box of really expensive Belgian chocolates. And within an hour, I had messengers. Within an hour, she calls me up and she says, "God, I got those gorgeous chocolates. What do you want?" I said, I want 30 minutes with the Donald. And she says, "You got it. Can you come up to New York on Tuesday at 1 o'clock?" And that was it. So there's always a way. You got to use your heart. You got to use your mind.
Yeah. One of the things, a lot of prospecting is being done on LinkedIn. And from my experience, a lot of people are just doing copy paste. They're not spending any thought into the prospecting. It's just copy paste. And then the receiver feels that it's copy paste. And can you just speak to anybody who's maybe going after some successful people and they're using that as a strategy, and give some advice on how you would do it?
Yeah, you want to know. I give you an example. I did a cover story with Tiffany and interviewed the CEO, but I also interviewed the VP of sales, and he says, I will not see anybody unless they can demonstrate they understand our business. They have done the research about our business. So if a salesperson calls me up and say he wants some time to pitch something, and then asking about questions that they can learn from looking at a balance sheet or a 10K report or a company story or whatever, about what previous interviews this guy has given, you need to do your research. You cannot copy and paste your way to success.
Yeah, I know in all my communication I've ever had with you, it's never been copy paste. Every message I've personally written to be able to connect with you, because it was important to me, and so that's just a little tip for anybody that's doing copy paste, especially if you're going after some really top notch people, to be able to have a message.
Also, you want to use connections that you have in common. Like you and I have Dr. Donald Moine in common.
Yeah.
So I would look at Eric and say, who are the 20 connections we have in common? And then I see which ones are the most important ones. And then you can drop those names. Or you can go to Dr. Donald Moine and say, hey, Don, I'd love to get a meeting with Eric. What's your recommendation?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I had a great connection with Andy Miller recently. And I connected with Andy because both of us recognized us in your publication for being sales consultants. And so Andy reached out to me because I was on that list, and he told me he reached out to everybody on there. And so we're doing some business now. And so I thought that was a very creative thing on his part, that he had that in common, and he reached out to everybody.
Right. And to me, a challenge is nothing but a wake-up call for creativity. And what Andy Miller has done, anybody can do. However, here's the thing. It takes the right mindset to get yourself to do the things that feel a little uncomfortable, that feel a little outside your comfort zone, because success grows outside your comfort zone, not inside.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you have for somebody who maybe they're wanting to do something that's out of their comfort zone, whether it's publish a book or they're wanting, here we're doing a podcast, maybe somebody thinks they're doing a podcast, but it's out of their comfort zone. Any mindset tips that you have or strategies for expanding comfort zones?
Yeah, I think that one of the questions you want to ask yourself, what are my limits in terms of thinking? How far can I go? Where's my ceiling? And then you can learn how to break that. A lot of people have that irrational, self-limiting belief that, let's say, this person will never talk to them. I approached so many, like Terry Bradshaw. Why would he give me an interview? We a sales publication, and he's a sports hero. He's a sportscaster, and why would he spend time with me? And as long as I tell myself I cannot get to Terry Bradshaw, I will never get to Terry Bradshaw. Mm-hmm. But once I overcame my own self-limiting belief and transformed it to a self-accepting belief where I said, well, I think that Terry Bradshaw is going to have a good time talking with me. And that may be an assumption that's a little preposterous. But I remember when we had this phone interview, we were on the phone for 2.5 hours. And we really, truly enjoyed one another. And he said, Gerhard, that conversation was the best Christmas present this year.
Oh, wow.
which is amazing. So you never know how you will bond and how we'll connect with somebody. And some people unconsciously think of that high-level, C-level executive that they want to reach as a critical parent. They say, well, I'm not interested in you, and you're not worth my time. I remember asking Jeff Immelt when he was CEO of GE, would you have time for an interview? And met him at a function. And he says, Gerhard, I would love to, but I'm way too busy. And I respect that, because he said no in a non-dismissive way, not in an arrogant way, but it was definite. It was clear. And, you need to be accepting that you're going to have, rejection rate of, let's say, 30%. And here's another way to think about it. Tom Hopkins said, if you get a commission for a sale that's like, let's say, $1,000, and you know from your numbers that it takes 10 sales calls to make one sale. So you have a ratio of 1 to 10. So you could look at the rejection at the 9 no's that you got in the process as an expression of gratitude. So you can say, well, Eric, I call on Eric and he says no. And quietly, silently, you say to yourself, thank you for the $100.
Yes. And when you prospected Terry Bradshaw, where did that lead come from? Did you just find it on the internet? Did you leverage a relationship? How did you get to him?
Well, I called the PR department at the news station, but there was even a more difficult thing, and I give you that story as well, where he says, I said, I need a picture. Can I send a photographer? And he says, well, I'm on my way to San Francisco now, and we're at the playoff games, and there's one at Candlestick Park, and I'm doing the moderating for the TV anchor, and send somebody there. And I said, okay, great. What time is it? What's a convenient time? So I got the time down, and then I called Candlestick Park, and I said, can I get a press pass for my photographer to take a picture of Terry Bradshaw? And the guy laughed, and he says, press passes were for that game. They were given away a year ago. You're more than way late. And so what do you do with this? I need a shot. I need a cover story. And we had him, slanted for the cover. So everything was on a tight production schedule. So I thought, well, maybe I can find a photographer who's doing something for the San Francisco Chronicle. So I called the San Francisco Chronicle. I said, I want to speak to the sports department. Who is going to go to Candlestick Park to cover
already has the press pass.
And I found somebody, and the guy says, well, it's against our company policy. We cannot do anything but shoot for the San Francisco Chronicle. So it wouldn't be ethical for me to do that. And I said, I respect that. So I called the San Jose Mercury News, and I said, I want to talk to the sports department. Who is covering the game? Well, it was Jose. Can I talk to Jose? And does Jose have a press pass? Yeah, of course he does. And and he was not available. And I said, where is he? And he said, well, he's at home. And I said, can I have his home phone number? Because it's really important. And what is this about? And I said, I would love to tell you, it's personal. And they gave me the phone number. So then I called that number, and his wife answered, well, Jose is not available. And I said, well, I'm a publisher. I'm on the East Coast. I have something very urgent, very important, but I would like to offer Jose $1,000 to take a picture of Terry Bradshaw doing that game at Candlestick Park. And she says, what time do you want him there? Jose is going to do it. And Jose called me an hour later. He said, I'd be happy to take that cover shot.
Yeah. Now, that's a tremendous story about sales creativity. And I think that most people in selling would have been stopped at the very first, can't get the press pass. I have to, change the when we do the cover story. And that's a great, just a sales lesson in your case study there of how you did it. So thank you for sharing that. I think a big part for all of you listeners to get is Gerhard, although he's the founder and CEO of his company, is very actively involved in the sales role. Anytime I've ever purchased advertising from you, you've always been the person that I've interacted with, as opposed to, here, talk to this other person, and you're very hands-on. And that's something that I really enjoy in having a relationship with you. Any goal that you have right now that you'd like to share with all the listeners, something you're working on, either personally or professionally in your life right now?
Well, I like to teach people about the mindset, and my personal goal is to do a mindset retreat in October, November timeframe. I want to do it in LA, and I want to give people an opportunity to drive a Ferrari or a Lamborghini on a racetrack. It's very transformative. We have done it before. We want to go to a drop center and offer people a tandem jump. We're going to challenge people on a golf course to shoot a hole in one. But here's my big dream is I've interviewed the CEO of Jetpack Aviation, and they have a training center out there where they teach people how to fly a jetpack for about 20 minutes. It's normally a 1-week training course, and the jetpack is like $250,000. And I want to try to fly in a jetpack. And I think it would be fun. There are fewer people that have ever flown in a jetpack, like James Bond, than people have gone up to Mount Everest.
Wow. Awesome. Well, Gerhard, I really appreciate you taking time out for me to do this podcast so I can share you with my community. And I appreciate your friendship and all of your support that you've had for me through the years. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for contributing to the sales profession. We all have the same goal. We want to have other people succeed. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, that's going to wrap up another great edition of the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Look forward to connecting with all of you on a future episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, make sure and subscribe to get notified of new episodes each week. And check out our other great episodes by going to continuoussalesimprovement.com. That's continuoussalesimprovement.com. And while you're there, pick up Chapter 1 totally free of my new book, Continuous Sales Improvement. Just opt in when you go to the website. Until next time, keep on improving. I'll see you in the next episode.